Employees of IKEA, what are some of the worst family meltdowns you have seen? I'm a cashier. There was a bratty teenager and her mom about to pay for their over $1,000 transaction, and the mom suddenly said, "You know what? This girl here doesn't deserve any of this. Put it all back." I've never seen a teenager completely lose it until that shift. I feel bad for my co-worker who had to do my go-backs. I work in IKEA food. I had one guy claim that he was a big guy and wanted me to put extra food on his plate after I made the plate. I explained that I can't, as we have to stick to portion size, and that he could add a side plate for $1.99. He then yelled that we are all cheapskates, stormed off to his family, brought all the plates of food that we made for them, and told us that he is going to bring his family somewhere good. Overheard two young women trying to agree on a dining table. One of them said, "This table screams. I just got out of prison and I need a table." On the one hand, harsh. On the other hand, lovely descriptive language. I know exactly what that table looks like. I used to work in IKEA in my student days, the Glasgow, Scotland store. When it was newly opened, an elderly Irish guy and his wife stopped me and asked where IKEA was. I explained that they were in IKEA and they couldn't understand. They had arrived at the ferry port in Ireland that morning and decided that they'd go on a day trip to somewhere they hadn't been before. When they arrived at the port in Scotland, there was a dedicated IKEA bus. They thought IKEA was an actual place in Scotland and didn't realize it was a shop. I walked away trying not to piss myself laughing as I could hear them blaming each other for the mistake. 2 words. Black Friday. It was 9:55. We open at 10. We were almost done. All that we had left to do was put out some children's kitchen set. What we didn't realize was that it was 50% off. I only had 2 pallets left to put out when the store opens and the horde came. They were crazy. Sprinting, pushing and shoving. They fought to get to these kitchens, and when they noticed my pallets, they tore them open and took it. Eventually one woman started screaming and attacked the guy who took the last one off of the pallet, not noticing the 2 full pallets. I had to pull her off him and security came. After about 10 minutes the chaos ended, and I cleaned up. At the point an elderly couple came and asked if there were any kitchens left, and I put one in their cart as my co-workers laughed at what had just occurred. A guy came in and wanted something that we only had in the air, so it would require a forklift to get the product down, which we don't do with people in the store for fairly obvious safety reasons. I told him we could get it down right after the store closed for him, but that was not an acceptable answer. He proceeded to lose it on me, demanding I bring out a forklift and take it down now. As this is happening, his wife and 2 small children walk up. I say, "Well sir, just imagine that your children are in the aisle when the forklift comes out and an accident occurs. Your children could be crushed by a falling pallet, the arms of the lift, or any other number of possibly fatal incidents." His response, "I don't give about that. I just want you to get my table." I didn't have to continue the conversation. His wife took care of it. My BF and I overheard while browsing in IKEA a couple having some sort of miscommunication in their relationship. I guess they were deciding on things to buy. The girl says we should get that rug, in which the guy replies to her super loud, "There is no way. You don't live with me." I didn't catch the rest of it as we had to walk away so they wouldn't hear us laughing so hard. Not a meltdown, but one of my favorite stories to tell people. My now husband and I were driving to IKEA, about 3 hours away, and this was at a point in dating when we were starting to get serious. On the trip, I found out his middle name was Riley, and I mentioned how it could make a very cute girl name. He was completely aghast and was very firm in stating that Riley is a boy's name, and had been handed down in his family for over 5 generations. I tried telling him that it was starting to change over to be a girl's name now, much like Ashley or Quinn. He thought I was crazy and was adamant that people do not name little girls Riley. We lightheartedly argued the point for a good 15 minutes. We finally get to IKEA, park, and walk in the front door. 5 feet in front of us a little girl of about 2 goes running by, and her mother is chasing after her, saying, "Riley, get back here." My husband just looked at me. I was once shopping at IKEA and noticed a couple with a guy just having the complete look of apathy and distraction while being berated by his wife. The volume was fairly low until they got to the bedroom department and she specifically said, "I'm thinking of buying new sheets, but I might as well not cause I don't wanna buy sheets just so you can have that HR girl in them. I hope you realize I'm just staying with your cheating until the kids are grown up." I was so distraught I went for Cutbilla to calm myself. I was in the Vancouver IKEA, and they have a children's play area that was packed. There must have been 100 kids in there, some being watched from outside and some completely unattended. Without warning, the power went out. There were emergency lights, but the play area was still quite dark. The kids all started shrieking and crying and running around in the darkness. The power probably only out for 2 minutes, but the chaos was spectacular. When the lights came back on, it looked like a battleground. Some kids were bruised and bloodied, some had the 1,000-yard stare of a war veteran. There were a few who had bonded together in the tunnels and refused to leave. Some were missing entirely. They must have escaped in the shadows into the well-furnished maze that is IKEA. The meatballs were good too. Overall 10 out of 10, but the bar was set high and no future visits could compare to that eventful day. I used to work at IKEA and have so many stories from there. I think a memorable one wasn't a family fighting, but it was 2 women fighting over my service. I was helping one customer and it was a super busy weekend, so I'm sure all the employees were pretty busy. As I was helping her, another woman came up and interrupted us. They started arguing and one of them called the other woman a cow. This was my IKEA family meltdown. My then boyfriend and I were getting our own place just after college. Until then, we had both been using twin beds thanks to student living spaces, and sharing a single twin was proving uncomfortable for 2 adult humans subjected to California summer temperatures. To fix this issue, off to IKEA we went. Things start off okay. We start with lunch, admire the living room couches, move into kitchenwares. All so far enjoyable fantasy. And then we reach our destination, bedrooms. A sea of beds and a variety of price points greet us with brightly colored duvets. An experienced furniture purchaser, I start scanning the price tags to narrow the options. I bring him to an attractive affordable model I think matches some of our bookcases. And this is where the trouble starts. See, up until now, I didn't realize exactly how bad this man's fear of decision making was. He stares at the bed incomprehensibly for literal minutes, refusing to talk about it. Eventually it is discovered that buying a bed means committing to delaying graduate school, never moving to the East Coast, and having children with me. I don't understand that logic and request explanation, which is slowly and tearfully given. We spent 3 hours in that IKEA and left with nothing. About a month later we went back and again after several hours bought that exact bed. He never went to grad school or moved to the East Coast. We also did not have children and broke up a few years later. He took the bed. I worked at IKEA for 5 years selling sofas. One of my co-workers, let's call him Jim, worked evenings and weekends in returns while his day job was teaching math at a local high school. One day a woman comes to the counter trying to return some pillows. Generally speaking, they didn't take returns on pillows for sanitary reasons. She also didn't have a receipt and the pillows were clearly used and absolutely disgusting. Jim tells the customer that he's sorry, but our return policy states we only accept products within 30 days of purchase, with the receipt, and unused in the original packaging. This did not sit well with her and she began to scream at Jim. She was spiteful and cruel. Jim had come to the US from another country years ago and while he spoke perfect English, still had an accent. She mocked his accent and told him to speak English. She repeatedly shouted that he was dumb and would never amount to anything. He was too dumb to get a real job, etc. Meanwhile, her teenage son is in the background. He's pleading with his mother to stop shouting at Jim. He's begging her to give it up so they can go home. Eventually she turns around to shout at her son and ask him why he cares so much. That's my calculus teacher. There had already been a parent-teacher night scheduled for a few weeks later. His father went alone. Currently in IKEA making the most of my complimentary cups of tea. The couple at the next table over just had a brilliant argument about whether or not they could put a TV in their bathroom. He thinks it will fit. Wife or girlfriend thinks it's the dumbest idea ever. They don't need it. It won't fit, and if he wants to do that then he can move back in with his mother. And he keeps asking her to give him half of her dame cake. After about 5 minutes of whining, she told him if wanted some he should have bought one because apparently he always does this. I might follow them around the rest of the shop to see what else happens. I followed them for a while before I found it way too awkward and the caffeine from 4 complimentary cups of tea kicked in and I needed to get out of there. I left them in soft furnishing and textiles. He was playfully throwing pillows at her to get her attention. She turned around and said, scarily calmly, I know that you think you're being funny, but you're not. So if you're going to act like a child, I will treat you like a child. Start behaving like an adult or we'll leave now and I'll take away yours box for a week. He pouted and marched off, muttering under his breath. IKEA Bristol lady, if you're out there, I hope he grows up, and also I really like the peacock blue pillow you bought. Also, to answer the many questions about free tea, I live in the UK and if you're a IKEA card holder you get free tea and coffee Monday to Friday. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want more. Talking Bot.